As the days have gotten shorter and cooler, we're starting to see a little bit of fall leaf color in the landscape. It won't be too much longer before those leaves start dropping to the ground, and that'll bring about a whole new set of garden chores. Things like raking up those leaves, planting bulbs, and pretty much just cleaning up our gardens and getting ready for the winter. One important chore that we need to have done in the garden before the leaves start to fall is getting our water garden prepared for the winter. There are lots of things that we need to get taken care of so next year we can continue to enjoy a clean, healthy water garden. One of the first things we need to think about is our fish. When the temperature falls to 50 degrees, it's time to stop feeding the fish in our water garden. And since we leave our fish in the garden throughout the winter, they have to adjust or acclimate as the water temperatures get colder and colder. Their metabolism slows down, and after a point it gets so low that they're not able to digest the fish food. So if we keep feeding them, they'll keep eating it, and it'll just sit in their stomachs and go undigested and can really make them sick. Some gardeners will feed their fish a wheat germ type of fish food in the weeks leading up to cold weather, and by doing this it will enable the fish to build up reserves that will last them through the winter. But once that 50-degree temperature mark is reached, it's time to stop feeding them all types of fish food. Well, it's always nice to have a helping hand when we're putting the water garden to bed for the winter. And joining us today is Laura Payne, our studio garden manager. Hey, Laura.
Hey, Steve.
So how's the water? Is it very cold?
Actually, it's not too bad. Earlier this year, we invested in this pair of hip waders, and so it's made getting in and out of the water during the spring and the fall a lot easier.
When it's a little bit cooler.
Yeah.
All right. Well, some of the first things we need to think about in putting our water garden to bed is the plants. We have tropical plants in our water garden, and we have hardy plants. Now, the tropical plants, of course, those won't overwinter. We've got some dwarf Egyptian paper plant like we've got right here. We're just going to take these out, and we'll put these in a tub of water and put them in our greenhouse and overwinter them that way. We've also got some dwarf umbrella sedge and this cranberry stem taro. Thank you, Laura. But we'll again put these in a tub of water and overwinter them that way. Some of the other ways you can overwinter these tropical plants, if you don't have a greenhouse, would be to put them in a tub of water and just set them in a warm, sunny location and try to overwinter them that way. Some of the tropical water lilies can be overwintered by pulling them out of the water, letting them dry, cutting off the tops, then dividing those tubers. And some gardeners have gotten those to survive the winter by placing those in some damp sand. But if you think all of this is a lot of work and a lot of trouble and you don't want to go through that, you may decide just to compost your tropical water plants and then buy some more next year. One thing you don't want to do with the tropical water plants is to discard those into a creek, a stream, a pond, or a lake, because they can actually sometimes overwinter and create some problems when they start growing and becoming prolific the next year. We've actually had some problems with this in Oklahoma where people don't want to throw away their tropical water plants and they toss them into one of these lakes. They can actually do some damage to the native ecosystems in those areas. So be sure and compost your tropical water plants. With the hardy water plants that we have here, we've got a lizard's tail and a water cannon right here. What we're going to do with those, Laura's just going to cut the tops off, and then we're going to set those plants down in a deeper part of their water garden so they will have a better chance of overwintering, be a little more insulated. The support that the plants are sitting on, or as Laura's showing you right there, are just some terracotta pots that enable the water plants to set up to their correct water level. A couple of years ago, when we redid our water garden here, we dug away the earthen shelves that we had in the garden, and now we just set our plants on these supports. One of the reasons we dug away that earth shelf in our water garden was to keep the raccoons from climbing down here, getting in that little bit shallower water and catching our fish. Well, as we get these plants cut back here, you can see now that we've got all of the plants that are kind of sticking up out of the water taken care of. The water lilies, of course, they're already in rectangular tubs on the bottom of our water garden. They'll stay green for a while. These are hardy water lilies, so we don't really have to do anything to those. Well, now that all the plants are taken care of, we need to think about winterizing the other components of our water garden. And I'm just going to come over here and unplug the pump that feeds our water garden and our biological filter. And we'll go ahead and let Laura dive down and pull that pump out of the pool, and we're going to take that in, get it cleaned up, store it indoors for the winter. Thank you, Laura. Well, now that we've got our pump out of the water garden, we'll take it in, we'll get all this gunk cleaned up from around the screen here. We'll just wash it down really good. We'll run some clean water through it, get all of the debris out of the inside, let it dry, and then we'll, again, store it throughout the winter. Now, if you choose to leave your pump running and leave your waterfall running throughout the winter, that's okay. It is a good idea to take your pump and raise it up about a foot off the bottom of your water garden. That way the fish can get down in that water below the pump and they won't be disturbed by the action of the pump. Now, we also have a biological filter that takes part of the water that's pumped through our pump to our waterfall. Part of that, again, goes through the biological filter where we have a type of media in there with some bacteria that help us purify the water. Now, as the temperatures get colder, those bacteria are going to die, so we don't really need to run the water through that also. So if you have a biological filter, just go ahead and bypass the filter for the wintertime. We will take the screens and the foam filters out of our biological system and get those really cleaned up and ready to go for next year. Well, as I said earlier, it is a good idea to get this done before the leaves start to fall so we can get some type of barrier put over our water garden to catch all of those leaves so they won't get into the water. And last year, Laura came up with a really unique idea to provide some support for the bird netting that we use for our water garden. So Laura, why don't you explain to us a little bit how your system works?
Well, Steve, all we did was took 2 pieces of rebar, put them on either side of the water garden, took this rigid piece of plastic tubing, inserted it over the rebar, and stretched it over to the other side. So then we can put the netting over it, and this provides support.
Okay, so this just slips over this other piece of rebar. Okay, kind of like that.
Just like that.
Gives us a nice, that is a good rigid piece of plastic. Just a little bit of strength there, just enough to hold up the net and those leaves. And we've got a few more pieces of those, I guess.
Yes, actually we put 3 pieces on, and then we'll just take the rest of the netting and tuck it under the rocks.
Great idea. Well, now that Laura and I have gotten the supports and the bird netting stretched across our water garden, we should be able to keep most of those leaves and pine needles from making it to the water. We don't want the leaves getting into the water because first, it'll be less muck that we have to clean off the bottom of the water garden next spring. Another reason is whenever organic matter decays in our water garden, it does so under anaerobic conditions, and it can actually produce some toxins that are pretty bad for the fish. Now, throughout the winter time, you'll want to come out here and clean the leaves off the netting periodically. That way you can keep them from building up and getting heavy, especially if they get wet in the rain. They can sag and make their way into the water, which would kind of defeat the purpose of the netting. Well, the last thing we want to make sure we have taken care of in our water garden is a way to keep the pond from freezing over completely if we have a really cold night or a cold day in the wintertime. Now, if you leave your pump and your waterfall running, that will keep ice from forming in a small part of the pond. But you can also get a water garden heater and put that in place to keep a small area from freezing over. What we've done here, we've taken just a plain aquarium heater, and Laura has rigged up this little method of keeping it afloat in the garden. Just have a piece of corrugated plastic drain pipe here and just a sheet of styrofoam. But this aquarium heater will just attach to the side there. We'll put a little spacer here to make sure that heating element doesn't come in contact with the plastic, and we'll just leave this floating in the water garden throughout the winter time. Now, we're not going to leave it plugged up the whole time because that would be unnecessary. We'll probably attach the cord over here to keep it from floating too far away from our plug-in. And we'll just keep this all covered with the netting and should be in good shape. Now, one thing you don't want to do in the wintertime if your water garden does freeze over is to come out and try to break the ice by hitting it or striking it. If you do that, you could give your fish a concussion and it could actually kill some of your fish. So don't try to break the ice by hand. This heater is really a good idea. Just keeps a small opening in the ice, allows the gases to exchange between the water and the atmosphere. But once again, once the water temperature reaches 50 degrees, stop feeding those fish. Get your bird netting or other type of netting stretched over your garden. Keep those leaves from falling in there. And if you're going to turn off your pump, it's a good idea to take it out of your water garden, bring it inside. Don't leave it in there all winter. Get it all cleaned up, and you should be well on your way to having a nice water garden again next year.